Okay, on to ink techniques for Inktober projects. Um, if you have a micron pen, these come in a variety of sizes. This is a 03. Those work fantastic for this kind of work, small detail work. But Sharpie makes an ultra fine point. You can kind of see how small that is. Permanent ink pen that works fantastic too, and those can be purchased pretty much anywhere. So I've made some circles up here. I'm just going to use those for demonstrating the different techniques, and these techniques are going to aid with two things in your drawings. They're going to give you a way to represent texture on your drawings and values on your drawings. Texture is, of course, the feel of the surface that's covering whatever it is that you're drawing. So how do we recreate that with lines? And value has to do with the varying degrees of lights and darks in your subject matter. So we'll talk more about that here shortly, but we're going to play around with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different kinds of line that can create both texture and varying values. So we're going to start with the contour lines, and contours are lines made that follow the edges of whatever it is that you are drawing. So for this little circle here, our lines are going to be curved lines that follow the edge of our circle, because we're kind of taking this flat circle and we're going to make it look more like a ball. And with contour lines, as with all of these techniques, when you draw more of the lines in a certain area and you make your lines closer together, that's going to increase the value as well as giving a feel for the texture of the surface. So if I'm looking at a marble that's a solid color, this would be a nice type of line for adding some dimension. And we add dimension by adding shadows and shading. And since we're making our lines curved, that's keeping with the feel of the surface, and also it gives a smoother effect than some of these other techniques. So that's contour lines. The next technique is cross hatching, which would not really fit a ball at all. And cross hatching is like you're drawing a plaid pattern. So you're going to have fairly parallel lines going one way, and then you're going to switch and go the other way. And if we want one area to have some shadow to it, some depth, we're going to add more lines in the area that we want to represent that area having a darker value. There we go. Our next technique is just using parallel lines, and those can go any which way needed for whatever your subject matter is. And I know we're doing this for Inktober, so I'm using pen, but you can do these techniques with graphite as well. If we were doing this with graphite, then we would also have the added feature of being able to smudge or blend. Our next technique is stippling, and stippling is just touching your pen down, making tiny dots. The size, they're going to end up just being however big the tip of your pen is. This is a really nice technique for stone, and it also, if you're not going for realism, it can be just a fun shading technique for just about anything. It really makes a nice effect. In the same way with stippling, if our light source is coming from the upper right, then that's going to be our lightest area with the least amount of pen work. And then the farther we go away from that area, we're going to have more of our technique, in this case the stippling, because more marks closer together increases the value. Our next technique is it is scribbling, and that just means that, you know, you're kind of doing a continuous wavy overlapping lines. This is really quick. It also may work super nice for if you're representing like trees off in the distance for the foliage, or bushes. It works nice for some animal furs as well. And the next one is also kind of a wild mark. It's just random marks. This is also, they tend to be like at least little groups of parallel lines, but less emphasis on trying to have them be straight or actually parallel. It's almost like a mix between parallel lines, contour lines. This works super nice for fur texture. That's a fun one too. And the last one that we're going to show is wavy lines. And this can be really nice when you're trying to show wood texture. And with the wavy lines, you kind of start going, and then you will follow what you did on your first stroke, usually a few more times before changing the wave of your strokes. So you'll have some that are very similar, and then some slightly different. You can have wavy lines closer together or farther apart to show. I'm thinking about bark right now. I just did a mushroom painting, and the little mushroom was growing up out of a decaying log, and so I needed to create that the little crevice, and this technique is good for that. Okay, so there's our 7 ink techniques for both giving a look of a certain texture and for showing shadow. So here's a little rock I found. It kind of has, it's very smooth, but it has an interesting look to it. It has a lot of variety. It's probably not showing up on the camera very good. And it has like these rings around it. So I don't know if I will end up drawing any rocks for Inktober or not, but I just have a little collection here of some random things I picked up. Here's a little, I actually think this is a hickory nut, but I'm not positive. It has a nice texture to it. It's kind of wrinkly, but also has pretty prominent ridges. So for your Inktober drawings, don't feel like you have to do a whole big scene. You can just pick, you know, small things from nature that relate to the prompt and do a small sketch. And that can be just as fun and satisfying, and it also kind of gives us permission to not spend a ton of time, but still maybe end up with close to 31 drawings by the end of the month. So here's a little buckeye I found, which I just think buckeyes are such a neat color. But it has a peck mark in it. I think the wild turkeys were pecking at them. There was a whole bunch like this in an area that we see turkeys a lot. And here is a turkey feather that, again, there might be an occasion to do a feather drawing related to our Inktober. So again, this, I don't know if I showed it very well before, but this is my Inktober nature inspired sketchbook, and it is small because I want to be able to do these drawings and enjoy them, but to do them quick. And we'll probably end up doing, you know, multiple ones on a day. So, all right, I hope that was helpful. Thank you.